alaikum, everyone. Ramadan Kareem, may this be a blessed month for all of you, full of blessings, full of accepted good deeds, full of happiness and pleasure, all that, inshallah. Just to remind you myself, my name is Marwan. I'm a student at Queen's University, and I've been on MuslimDo many times under different programs. Inshallah, this one's going to be very different, very important also. My program this Ramadan is called Understanding International Politics. Okay, so why a topic like this? Why in Ramadan especially? Well, let's start by who the target audience of this app are. Well, for now at least, it's meant for Muslims living in North America, particularly in Canada. And you as Muslims living in the West needs some way, some strategy in order to protect your interests and maintain your community's dignity. And the good thing about living in the West is that you have a critical thing, which is political freedom. You're in a position where you have a say over what happens in your country. You're allowed to rally around a cause you believe in and lobby for it and garner support. You're allowed to decide who you want to be responsible for the affairs of the country you're in based on their agenda and what they say they're going to bring to the table. You as a Muslim, you should use this voice you were given to advocate for your community and to serve the causes that provide security and peace and safety for your fellow Muslims. And we've talked many times on MuslimDo before about the importance of political work and being involved politically for Muslims in the West. I know, for example, brother Firas Miresh has been very active on this topic, on this application. Okay, then. But if you're talking about being involved politically, why is it that you have a program on international politics? Why not just focus on domestic issues? Well, the reason in the end comes down to two things. Number one, what are the issues that the Muslims face? And number two, what is the nature of Islam as a religion? Let's tackle number one. What are the issues that Muslims face? Well, if you think domestically, you can come up with things like difficulty of integration, obstructions to religious freedom by hijab bans, for example, or by aggressive indoctrination of LGBT ideas on Muslim children. And those are significant issues. But then there are the Uyghur Muslims in China being put in concentration camps. There's the rights and safety of Indian Muslims being encroached upon day after day. And, there's very obviously the Zionist occupation of the lands of Palestine. There's the situation in Afghanistan, in Yemen, in Syria, in Burma, and many other countries. And even in France now, where the Muslim community is constantly being threatened by far-right politicians. Okay. But then you might say, those issues are not related to Muslims in Canada or the US. Why should we focus on those? And that's where point number two comes in, the nature of Islam as a religion. The reality is Islam, as portrayed in the Quran and the Hadith, does not recognize any national boundaries between people of the Muslim faith. Meaning, a Palestinian Muslim whose house is being demolished is just as much your brother in Islam as your Muslim neighbor in Toronto. So even though you're halfway around the world, it is still your job to advocate for him and to contribute politically to his well-being. And this is something, by the way, Muslims already look out for. Muslim voters, from what I'm seeing, they always pay attention to the position on Israel, for example, of the political candidates take, and they use that to help them decide their votes. And even Muslim candidates who run in North American elections have a very, very solid foreign policy doctrine as well. This is absolutely something to be proud of, by the way, and not shy away from. Don't let anyone tell you, oh, you have dual allegiance or whatever. For example, the Jewish community does this all the time. The Sikhs do this all the time, and it's completely legitimate. It's very normal for a community within a country to have international interests, stuff beyond the country's borders. And this is basically the purpose of this program. If it's your job to advocate for Muslims around the world who are suffering and to guard their interests, then you must understand international politics. And this is what I'll try to do on this program, although I must say this program during Ramadan at least is only going to be about 4 episodes, including this one, which is absolutely not enough time for a topic like this. And so the program will at best be a primer or an introduction into the topic, something to help you get started on it. The show will take on a very academic style. I'm going to be talking in a very, I don't want to say fully neutral, but mostly neutral sense when discussing matters of international politics, which means not a lot of preaching as I used to do in some of my previous programs on MuslimDo. it's pretty common, if you're taking your news from Instagram, for example, to come across a lot of political news posts that virtue signal or at least take a side. Usually they start off with what's happening in country X, right? There's that big headline, what's happening in country X. And then it starts explaining why one side is good and one side is bad. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. But I definitely won't be doing that here. Here, we'll be discussing international politics, not on a moral compass, but mainly on a compass of interests. Because interests, masalih, that's really the most important thing here. Another very important thing on this program is I'm only focused on no-nonsense politics. In other words, we're analyzing things based on common sense and logical reasoning. So conspiracy theories and you may think that was definitely no conspiracy theories, that's for sure. But you may think, okay, fine, that's pretty obviously expected. But the reality is, so many people in the world do subscribe to many of those theories. Usually it's some underground international government or the World Economic Forum or whatever that's running everything under the table and looking to dominate everything. Yeah. So I'll actively be advocating for you to avoid this way of thinking completely. Conspiracy theories are, the lazy person's way of looking at the world. They're too lazy or even too arrogant to sit down to research and look at the facts. When in fact, if they did do their own work and do their homework and do their research, they would find that almost everything in the world of international politics can be explained by common sense and logic. We as Muslims, if we ever want to stop being disconnected from reality and be strong at the international level, we need to start using our brains more and be willing to think and critically analyze information and avoid succumbing to this lazy way of thinking. So the way this is going to go is that every episode, we're going to be addressing a certain topic in international relations. And around that topic, we're going to be discussing a certain theme. So, for example, in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about the Russian war in Ukraine. And this will be in the broader context of geopolitics. Geopolitics is very important if you want to, in order to realize why and how states do the things they do. And then in the episode after that, we're going to be talking about the rise of China. And this will be in the context of the emergence of the multipolar order. As you guys may realize, the unipolar order that existed before, where the US is the sole superpower, which happened after the fall of communism, is very quickly fading away. And now we're headed towards a multipolar world order, similar to that which existed before the First World War, for example. And then in the final episode of the program in Ramadan, I'm going to be talking about American-Israeli relations. And this will be in the context of internal lobbying, because the extremely strong relationship between the US and Israel is largely determined by an extremely strong lobby for Israel within the US that influences politicians. And so we're going to be talking about that. Inshallah, there's going to be a lot you can learn. So stay tuned for the future episodes, inshallah, and I look forward to being there. And, lastly, before I go, I'd like to thank the great people behind this app for their efforts and their dedication. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them the best. They put in a great amount of work into this app, updated it continuously, and now it's so much better than when it began. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them the best, and make sure to, support the app. Download it, ask your friends and family to download it, donate to your mosques through the app. This is a time when good deeds are cherished and prized more than any other time. So make sure to use this month wisely, inshallah. And I'll see you next week, inshallah, where we're going to talk about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Assalamu alaikum.